Hey guys, this is Panda here, and this is my second attempt at making a Resident Evil play or tier list. I've been playing all the Resident Evil games on my stream, and I thought I'd make a tier list of all the ones that I like and the ones that I don't like so much. But this time, in order to make this recording shorter, I'm actually going to time myself. I have a timer set up on the other screen so I don't rant about each game for too long and make a 35-minute long video. So hopefully I can make this shorter. Okay, and we're going to start this timer as soon as I look at the first game, which is Resident Evil Dark Side Chronicles, starting now. Okay, Dark Side Chronicles is a rail shooter. It sums up the events of Resident Evil 2, Veronica, and there's some added backstory for Leon and Krauser. I actually enjoy it. I like rail shooters. House of the Dead's like one of my favorite arcade games, so it's, you know, instead of House of the Dead, it's Resident Evil, the rail shooter, and I think it's fine. It's definitely more fun if you have like a motion gun controller, of course, and not using a controller. That's why this game was on the Wii originally, and it's perfect for that. I think it's this might be a little bit higher than some people are used to seeing this game, but I actually think it's pretty fun. I like it. Next game is the remake of Resident Evil 1. I can't even talk. I'm trying to rush myself. This game is perfect in every way. It made the original game much better, added new mechanics, new rooms, new enemies, better voice acting. The graphics still look great. They added difficulty levels, and even like extra modes like invisible enemy mode, real survival mode. It's perfect. It's like a solid example of what a remake should be. And people need to take more look at this game more when they make remakes of their games. Resident Evil 2 remake, also S tier. This is my favorite game. This was my favorite game last year. It was my personal game of the year, and it's probably my favorite Resident Evil game ever. Just like the original remakes, this one also improved the voice acting, improved the graphics. Looks amazing. There was some cut content, like there's no spiders, and the differences between the first and second scenario playthroughs is kind of disappointing compared to the original, but overall it's a fantastic remake, and I was praising this game a lot. I loved everything about it. All right, next, Gaiden. Anything I put in the F tier, by the way, are games I haven't played. In fact, let me just change that right now. Whoops. Let me change F to never played it. I forgot to do that before recording, but that's fine. Gaiden is a Resident Evil game that's on the Game Boy Color. I've never played it. Maybe I will in the future. I don't think a game on the Game Boy Color can be too scary in 2020 or anytime in the future. Resident Evil Outbreak file number 2. I'm gonna put that in D. I do not like the Outbreak series because you're forced to play online. You can't even do this like local co-op, multiple controllers plugged in kind of thing. Has to be online. Otherwise your experience is going to be miserable, and it kind of sucks that you have to do that. So it's a Resident Evil game that has a cool concept of being able to play as the everyday survivors or citizens of Raccoon City, and you're just trying to get out of the infested city, and it has some cool level and character design. Like, for example, one of the first levels you play in is a zoo that can have either an infected elephant or an infected lion chasing you around, and I think that's silly, but overall it's a very hard game to play by yourself. The AI is atrocious, excuse me. And yeah, it's just not that great in my opinion. Ow! That beep scared the fuck out of me. Jesus Christ. Reset. Next game. Umbrella Chronicles drops down to a C because it's just like a slower version of Dark Side Chronicles in my opinion. It does go over Resident Evil's 1, 3, and I forgot what other one does. It also has Chris and Jill taking down some Umbrella peoples. But it also features some interesting side stories from Wesker. And I think Ada as well. So it's an okay rail shooter. It's just very slow paced. Dark Side Chronicles, I remember being much faster and much more fun. All right, next one is Dead Aim. I need to change this to F, by the way, real quick, because I don't like the bottom should be F. I just played this game recently. This game was designed to use the GunCon controller on the PS2. Story wise and gameplay wise, absolutely trash. I did not like any of the characters. They were not memorable. The enemies were very bleh. The level design was bleh. The story was again generic. Just nothing stands out. And in fact, the better way to play this game is just to run through everything instead of shooting everything, which this game wanted you to do with its GunCon control thing. And yeah, it ends up not being the way to play. The subtitles didn't even match what everyone was saying, by the way. I thought that was weird. So yeah, pass on that one for me. Next is Revelations 2. That's gonna be an A tier game for me. To put it short, this is what Resident Evil 0 should be. In terms of controlling two characters, it does it much more better. The item managing isn't as a pain in the ass, and I do think it has a decent enough story. Am I forgetting anything? I think that's pretty much it. I thought it was good. I might be a little bit biased because Revelations 2 has Claire in it, and I like Claire. She's my favorite female Resident Evil lead, and Leon is my favorite male lead. So there might be a little bit bias, but I thought overall it's a fantastic game, and it stays at least on the horror side for the most part, unlike Revelations 1, which we'll talk about in a second. So moving on to the next one, which is, I don't know what that is. I can't read that title, it's so tiny. Gun Survivor 2, whatever, I don't know. Umbrella Corps is yikes, it's a PvP RE game. I don't know who wanted that or why Capcom thought they had to make that, but that's a yikes from me, dude. Resident Evil 3 Original is going straight into the S tier because this, in my opinion, is like the peak of Capcom in the PlayStation 1 era. This is where they had they introduced the dodging mechanic in this one, as well as during cutscenes. Some cutscenes you have the ability to choose like a different option, and depending on what you choose, the outcomes will change and stuff. Some characters will die, some will die earlier than some to spoil there, but I thought that was really cool. They also had Jill have a ton of weaponry. Nemesis constantly chases you from room to room. You never feel safe. The atmosphere is intense and spooky the whole time. So absolute S tier for me. Moving on to the next one, Resident Evil 6 is yikes. I'm gonna put that in D, because it does have a couple positives, but overall Resident Evil 6 is a terrible horror game. There's only like a small portion of Leon's campaign, Leon and Helena's campaign, that is a little spooky, but once you get past that, it's just nonstop action. Same with Chris and Piers, Sherry and Jake. All of their campaigns aren't spooky. It's more just tons and tons of enemies, shoot a bunch of stuff, explosions, action, combat. The few positives it has is that the mercenaries mode was actually pretty fun, and melee in this game is actually pretty fun, I have to admit. And controlling the characters felt better than in RE4 and 5. All right, moving on. I'm out of time already. RE7, that's gonna go into the A tier. RE7, not a lot of people like it because of the whole first person thing. This game was designed for PlayStation VR. I wish it would be on PC. I would have definitely loved to experience this game on VR. It feels like it would have been a really cool experience, but despite that, I think definitely the beginning portion of Resident Evil 7 is absolutely S tier. What made it drop down to A is that towards the second half or the later half of the game, it gets really repetitive and not so much spooky anymore. The whole boat portion where you have to play through it as Mia and then play through it again as Ethan was kind of a letdown. And the mine section as well is pretty boring and generic. But the whole beginning with the Baker family chasing you and all that stuff was absolutely amazing. Hopefully Resident Evil 8 improves this. Okay, beep scared the shit out of me. Okay, I'm restarting the timer on Code Veronica because I got like a Discord thingy and I had to reset. But anyways, Code Veronica is an A because it's a very solid Resident Evil game. Good characters, interesting villains. It has Claire, so again, bias is there. But it's very long. What prevents it from being an S tier game is that this game feels so stretched because of how long it is, because you have to play through Claire in the first half and then you switch over to Chris for the second. And the second half is a little less scary because you're basically just going through the same areas again, just with Chris, and there's some alterations. But I'm very disappointed that Capcom isn't choosing to remake this and they are instead moving on to 4. I still think this game is great, despite how long and repetitive it can be sometimes and those long door sequences. I'm about to run out of time, so moving on to the next one. What's next? Resident Evil the original. That is gonna go C tier, I think. Yeah, I'm happy with C. Resident Evil, this is the original game. I mean, this is the start of it all. This is the first game that I watched my sister play and it spooked the hell out of me. That being said though, like when you compare Resident Evil to like all the other ones, like to be fair, like even comparing it to the original Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, it has way less mechanics obviously, and it's a lot simpler and it's very tanky controls. Of course, this game gets remembered mostly because of its voice acting and the usage of real actors and actresses in the beginning. We all know the whole Jill Sandwich thing and stuff, but overall, it's still a good Resident Evil game, despite that. Okay, I rant too much. Next, Revelations. This is the one I'm playing right now. That goes in B. Revelations could have been a much higher and a much better Resident Evil game on this tier list, but because of the sections where you have to play a flashback or you play as other characters other than the main characters Jill and Parker, it really pulls you out of the horror spooky atmosphere, because this game does have some legit spooky parts. Like the Rachel encounter was actually pretty scary, but then it's like you get spooked and you're in the mood, and then all of a sudden, like, just kidding, now you're gonna play as Chris and you're gonna fight a bunch of dogs in the snow. It's like, what? Or now you're gonna play as these two comic relief characters, which aren't even funny at all, to me at least, and you're just gonna shoot a bunch of enemies. It's gonna be actiony and laughs, and then you're like, what the hell? And also the story does get a little confusing because they use a lot of acronyms and terms that you're not familiar with. Ow! Next, Gun Survivor. Never played it. Resident Evil 2 Original. This is let me start the timer. This was my favorite before the remake, and it's still a solid Resident Evil game in my opinion. I love everything about it. I like Leon, I like Claire, I like the story. The differences between A and B scenario is definitely way better done in this game. It also has a lot of replayability compared to most other Resident Evil games. There's nothing much more to say other than I love it. It might seem a little bit biased that I really like the second one, but I do. It's a special game for me. It's one of my favorites. So that's that for that one. Next game, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Yikes. This is a game that I've only played through once, so I barely remember it, and this was years ago. I remember it had a really cool trailer. I don't remember story-wise what happened, and I don't remember gameplay-wise what happened, but I do remember it's another one of those like online multiplayer co-op-y games I might have to revisit it, but I just remember it was not good. It was very forgettable. I had problems running it on PC because of Games for Windows Live. And yeah, I don't think it has too many redeeming qualities. I might have to look at it again, and maybe if I like it, it might bump up to a D. But it was very, from what I barely remember about it, it was very bleh. Moving on. Residual Outbreak is going to be in the same tier as file number 2. And this is because it's more or less the same game, but just, it's just it even uses the same characters, actually. Same characters, just different levels for the most part. So it's pretty much the same game, and same complaints. You have to play it. Well, it's better to be played online, than single player. It's a miserable experience on single player. Still terrible AI, but I was able to beat this one and not file number 2. File number 2 is just miles harder, even on easy mode. But yeah, I know a lot of people like the Outbreak games, so I'm probably gonna get some flack there. Moving on. Next is Resident Evil 4. I just beat this yesterday. This is probably gonna go... I almost want to... Yeah, I'm gonna drop it into B. This might not sit well with a lot of people, but I believe at the time that this game was released, Resident Evil 4 was great. Like, if you were to ask Panda 10 years ago what he thought about RE4, I might have put this on A or even S tier. But replaying it more recently, it's like, yikes, there's a lot of stretched out sections of this game. I feel like it's way longer than it needs to be. And a lot of rooms just have it feels like annoyingly like when they have rooms of infinite spawning enemies that come running at you, it just gets super annoying. And I know a lot of people hate the Ashley escort mechanic, but honestly it's not too bad. But my only big problem with this game is that it just feels too long. But other than that, it's still a good Resident Evil game. I'm sorry I rant too much. Resident Evil 5. Reset the timer. Go. Resident Evil 5 is... I honestly should put that in D because it's just as bad in terms of horror. But I think Resident Evil 5 still has some good sections, even though it's not horror. The problem with RE5 is it has a terrible story, but it has decent co-op gameplay, I think. Definitely on the action side, shooting felt a lot better than it did in RE4, obviously, and it still looks pretty great for a game that came out years ago, almost a decade old now, which is making me feel old. But yeah, it's still better than 6 because story-wise, it still has Wesker as he makes a good antagonist, whereas 6, the antagonist there is kind of ridiculous. All right, moving on. Next is, I'm gonna go ahead and put this last game here, Mercenaries 3D. I never played it. That's on the 3DS. But the last game on this list is Resident Evil 0, which is a B tier game in my opinion because of the gameplay mechanics. I think story-wise it's okay, and level design-wise it's okay, especially I thought the train section is actually pretty cool, and the facility section is pretty cool. But man, item management in this game is such a pain in the ass. Controlling both Rebecca and Billy at times is such a pain in the ass. In fact, sometimes it's even better just to have one character just wait in a room that's safe, and then you play as the other character and you go do all this shit yourself, unless it's a section where you need both characters for whatever reason. But this game could have been so much better if they just had item boxes, in my opinion. It's annoying as hell because as a casual player, I like to loot everything, and this game limits you so hard when you're trying to do that. And my timer is about to beep. That is all the time I have, so I had to hastily go through all the Resident Evil games on this tier list. Let me know what you guys think. Before I leave, I almost forgot again. Resident Evil 3 Remake, if it was on, I don't know why it's not on here. That goes in, I'll actually do a timer for this too, so I don't rant too long. Resident Evil 3 Remake goes on B tier for me, and that is because Like a lot of Resident Evil games, it starts off really well, but then it gets dull towards the middle. Also, I'm very disappointed at the large amounts of cut content. I've already explained this before, but like no park area, no clock tower area, no worm boss. That's not even in the game. There's no branching off paths in cutscenes. I feel like they really could have taken that mechanic from the original and made some really interesting stuff happen in the story. Like that could have been that could have added huge replayability, first of all, and they could have done even more with it than they did in the original game. And it's just really disappointing to see that it comes with resistance, which is not something I would play ever, but it's still okay. I'm just gonna finish by saying it still has my favorite version of Jill that I've ever seen in a Resident Evil game, and Carlos was really well made. He's a really well made character in that game as well. Again, story wise, the streets section in Raccoon City with the whole initial outbreak, everyone's running around, the zombies are everywhere. That part was cool. Nemesis was chasing you as well. That was cool. And then like middle-ish section, it gets bleh. That's what happens. And then it kind of picks up again towards the end, but not really so much. So it starts off great, ends up being poop towards the end, at least in my opinion. It's kind of like Resident Evil 7, right? Strong start, bad finish. So that is my RE tier list. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below and stuff. I tried to make it shorter this time around, so hopefully I was able to do that. Let me know what Resident Evil games you think are S tier. Maybe you have a different opinion than mine, probably, most likely. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. All that good stuff. Bye bye.